The BYU Cougars play host to their bitter rivals, the Utah Utes. I just sounded like an essay saying that intro. My name is Guy. That is Tariq. Tariq, let's start off with BYU. This is a very, very, very impressive team as of late. Obviously, they just upset Iowa State in Ames. Very impressive. Also have won at Arizona recently against Kansas, against WVU. All of those are tournament teams. But that Iowa State win that they're coming off of on the road in one of the best home environments in the country against a team that is my national championship pick, these Cougars have got to be feeling good.
Yeah, I agree. 7 game winning streak. They started out conference play 2-4. Didn't start out really well. I think they fell as low. I think they were like 4-6, 4-5 at one point. Um, and they really haven't looked back ever since. And it kind of started their trajectory kind of started when they lost to Utah the first time. So it's kind of cool to see like where they were in the first game and where they are at the end of the regular season in this last matchup. Um, as a guy who every time I've done a BYU game, I've talked about how much I love Richie Saunders' game. The last 2 to 3 weeks has made me look really good because I feel like I came on here multiple times and was like, he needs to shoot more than 9 shots, and he scored almost 20 in every game over the last 2 to 3 weeks. So um, I love that for my agenda because we do push agendas around here. Um, I just love the way he plays basketball. He's a great shooter, obviously, but just the way that he can score without having the ball in his hands and is not a guy that's forcing any shots. He's only going to get good shots. So, um, and then speaking of good shots, I mean BYU. I mean they're got Dallin Hall coming off the bench, giving you 20 plus points. You got Cannon Catching come off and hit 4 threes. Like obviously, we don't know if he's playing or not in this game, but it feels like they have so many options offensively, and we haven't even talked about their lottery pick yet. So, I mean, that should say all we need to say about BYU. Are there any things that you're looking forward to in this game specifically?
I mean, if I have to nitpick about what didn't go as well as you would like it to go against Iowa State, it's that you turn the ball over 29 times,
Mhm.
which typically when you force 11 turnovers and you turn the ball over 29 times, you're not going to win the game. Uh, they did. I mean, that's what matters. But Demon had six of those. I think throughout the whole year, the only real problem that we've had with Demon has been turning the ball over. It's nitpicking. He's
Yeah,
a top 10 pick in the draft, I think, pretty easily. He's a big guard. He passes well. He can shoot. Honestly, some of his passes explain the turnovers. He's just getting a little bit too opportunistic. It's a similar thing that Elliot Cadeau at North Carolina has, where just they're such talented passers that some of the ones that they go for are ridiculous.
yeah,
I think that the key actually for BYU in this game, I mean, they're pretty clearly the better team, especially Utah not having a basketball coach. I'm not sure if the guy they just got from the Mavericks is gonna be on the sideline this game or if that's a postseason thing, but I think that the key for BYU is just can they stop Ezra Asar? Uh, I've I've been watching a lot of Utah basketball recently as I know that they're not really on the bubble, and you're like, Guy, why are you watching this mediocre at best Big 12 team? I've actually been getting really into the Mason Madsen vlogs on YouTube. They're really fun to watch. Highly recommend those. Uh, but the the watching all of this Utah basketball, I really think that he is the pretty key guy to stop. Obviously, he had 25 against ASU just a couple days ago, but in general, he is the overpowering guy. Gabe Madsen is gonna hit threes every single game. You know that. That's how it works. But Ezra Sarr, if Keita and Traore and all the whole contingency of large men at BYU are able to quiet Ezra Sarr, that is how you win the basketball game and win it convincingly. because you know a guy like Gabe Madsen is going to get his. There's nothing you can do to stop that. He can make a three with a hand in his face off of 1 foot, off the bounce, whatever you want to say. He can turn a corner. He's a good basketball player. He's an experienced basketball player. This is his 5th year. Ezra Asar is a guy who gets kind of streaky. Sometimes he can draw fouls really well. And as long as you can put a stop to him, it shouldn't be too difficult, especially to a team without a head coach. I mean, like, what are we doing? If they lost to Utah earlier this year on the road, I get it. Rivalry game. They still had their head coach at the time. They hadn't yet crumbled. They were still sort of on the periphery of the bubble. This game, the head Craig Smith is gone. The bubble hopes are gone. It's a rivalry game at home. There is no excuse to lose. I mean, you can say, "Oh, Catchings is gone," but the reality is you're going to win this basketball game. We can get into score predictions in a minute, but I think BYU is going to win this game handily. I think Demon is going to look good. I think Saunders is going to look good. I would really love to see a big Kebaketa game just because I think he's really fun to watch. And I hope to see Cannon Catchings. Never like to see a guy get hurt, especially a guy who has first round draft aspirations. I guess the silver lining to that for BYU fans is that he might come back another year. And Xavion Staten, Cannon Catchings, and AJ Debansa is going to be really fun. But I think just relish this game. I think it's going to be a rivalry win. I don't know if you have any different thoughts about Utah than I do, Tariq.
Um, I will say they do play pretty well against teams that they necessarily shouldn't beat. Um, we're not that far removed from them beating Kansas at home. They beat Kansas State at home right after that, within 2 days of each other. But then they go and lose to UCF. Uh, they lost pretty badly to Arizona, and they beat Arizona State, and then lost by 2 to West Virginia.
One
So
thing
they're
I
a
will
team
say
that's
about that
capable of,
UCF loss is that it was very ref fueled.
Mhm,
There were some calls there that were out of their control.
for sure. Um, so I mean, that's another game that they could have had. Um, I mean, they're not the most talented team in the world, but they're always going to play hard in a game like this. Like you said, it's a rivalry game. Um, they don't necessarily have NCAA tournament aspirations, so if you can go and beat, your rival at their place, last game of the season, like you said, they don't have a head coach right, or they do now, but didn't have a head coach in the last couple of weeks or last week and a half or so. Um, I feel like both teams understand what's at stake. I know BYU is going to come out and play hard because they're at home. It's the last regular season game. It's a rivalry game, but I think Utah is going to come out and play at a high level as well. In the first matchup, Asar had 26 points, and Gabe Matson only had 8 points on 1 of 11 shooting. You may not necessarily get the 26 from Asar again, but if you could not get 8 points from Gabe Matson, you might have another chance to win the game. So, and that was a 1 point game in overtime. So while BYU is more talented, I do think that Utah can make this a game. Uh, I would say the swing factors are Keita and Traore because they've basically traded off like great games between each other. Like one game, Kevin Keita has 15 rebounds. The next game, Traore's got 20 points. Like you just never really know who's going to be the better center that night. And sometimes it's both of them. Like you really just don't know. So I think that's the swing factor for BYU. I think you know what you're getting from the perimeter guys and your I guess if you want to call Gabe Matson a power forward, swing forward, whatever. You know what you're gonna get from those guys. It's once you get to the centers and the big guys down low, I think that's where the advantage really happens for BYU.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one other last thing to just keep tabs on as far as Utah goes is they've got a guy on the team like Mike Sheriff Jamps. He's I've been watching this man play basketball for like 4 years now, and I still have no idea how his name is pronounced. But uh, obviously he isn't the his stats don't pop out to you, but
Mhm.
he does seem to have these weird 15-point explosions and then followed, surrounded by a 4 point game and a 5 point game or a 14 point game. And keeping him quiet is going to be an important thing to do, especially if there is an inconsistent game from a guy like Gabe Madsen or from Ezra Sarr, just because he's one other guy who can explode and beat you. But I don't think it really should be that difficult for BYU to do. So, what do you predict the score to be in this one, Tariq?
I'll go BYU 79, Utah 70.
I think I'll go BYU 82, Utah 71 as well. Uh, I think BYU wins this pretty handily by double digits. Um, I think Utah keeps it close through the first half, and then BYU sort of runs away with it in the second half. And if I had to call my shot, I think it's going to be a good Kebaketa game. Um, I don't know why, just vibes feeling it. And
See it?
no matter what happens in this game, Utah wins, BYU wins, we get a blowout, we get an overtime thriller. Tariq and I will be right here breaking it all down this weekend.